Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. On this channel we talk about solo travel for guys, and specifically if you're a guy want to take your first trip overseas solo. Today I'm going to talk about train travel. I'm going to talk about kind of like why I think it's great, what the advantages of and what the disadvantages of train travel, and specifically in Europe. And the reason why I say that is because I live out here on the west coast of the United States, and so we don't have trains. We don't have convenient trains. We don't take trains, and so when I first started traveling to Europe, I thought it was fantastic, like the train system and all that, how convenient they were. If you live back east, then you probably, or you might have a different experience about train travel, but I think trains are fantastic. My rule of thumb is that if I can take a train for 6 hours and get, to my destination, I'll take a train. Anything over that, then I'll fly, a budget airline or something like that. But anything 6 hours, I know some people take trains for 8 hours. I know people who in Ukraine or in Europe, they'll take trains for 25 hours. So, but for me, just kind of the rule of thumb is 6 to 8 hours, and that's about it. I'll take a train. The advantages of taking a train are, the number one advantage is it drops you off in the city center. Usually the train stations, the main train stations, are in the city center. And so once you get off, you can usually walk like a half hour to your hotel or your Airbnb from the train station. And again, if you're a single guy and you're traveling the world, by yourself, you want to stay in the city center. You want to stay where all the life is. I don't care how cheap it is, or what. You don't want to stay out in the suburbs in a hotel or Airbnb. You want to stay right in the middle of all the life of the center of the city. And the train stations are usually located very, very close to that. So that's the number one thing for train. The number one advantages of train travel is that it drops you off in the city center. The second thing that's an advantage of it, might be cheaper than flying. A lot of times you can usually get a train ticket for $25, $20 if you want to go real budget, if you want to share like the compartment with people and all that. But if you want to get like a first class ticket on a high speed train or something like that, it could cost you like $90, $80, something like that, depending on where you are in the world. But often train travel is cheaper than flying, so that's another advantage of train travel. And it's also scenic. I mean, you can, since you're on the ground, obviously you can see nature, you can see the route. There's a fantastic website called seat61.com. That'll tell you, it tells you everything you want to know about getting a train in Europe. I've used it for every place I went to. Anyways, on that site, they'll tell you kind of like what side of the train to sit on for the best scenery. And that's why I thought about that website. But it's seat61.com if you're looking to book a train. And again, if it's your first time, obviously, to Europe, and it's first time ever on a train in Europe, go to that website. It'll help you with almost anywhere you want to go in Europe. And then the fourth advantage is it's relaxing. I mean, train travel is 1,000 times more relaxing than flying. There's no security. You can bring whatever you want on the plane for the most part. The luggage rules, I mean, you can bring whatever luggage you want, and you only have to get there, say, 15 minutes before. I mean, if this is your first time overseas, you probably want to get there, 45 minutes before, an hour before. But if you're used to trains and you're a veteran of train travel, you only have to get there maybe 15 minutes before the train leaves, as opposed to getting to the airport, an hour and a half to get on your flight. And that's why I said earlier, kind of like door to door, it could be faster to take the train, because if you have to go out to the airport, you leave 2.5 hours before the flight. It's a half-hour taxi ride. You get to the airport 2 hours earlier. All the boarding, you take your hour flight, and then when you get off the plane, you have to find a way to your hotel, whether that's Uber, whether that's the train, somewhere else. and that probably takes another 90 minutes. And so it all adds up, and so it's probably 5 hours, 6 hours just for an hour-long flight, and the train might be faster, again, door to door. And so with all that said, that's just the more relaxing way to travel. But with all advantages, there are some disadvantages. The disadvantages, the first obvious disadvantage is the train. It could be longer than flying, if all things are equal, but usually they're not equal. If you're flying, again, the train could be slower, basically, because it's not as fast as a plane, obviously. Also, another thing that I didn't like about trains, and again, if you have experience on trains, you might know this, but I thought it was weird that depending on what seat you get or assigned to, and I'm sure you can pick seats also. I can't remember if I'm sure I have picked seats, but depending on what seat you get, you could be facing backwards than the direction of train travel. And that's kind of weird. It takes some getting used to. Like I remember the first time that happened to me, the train started going to me backwards, and I thought they were just kind of fixing something or whatever. And it continued for the next 2 hours or whatever. And it takes some getting used to traveling backwards on a train. It's kind of like but you get used to it, and it's kind of like sitting at a movie theater when you're up close to the screen. If there's no seats and you have to sit up front, your eyes get used to it after a while, and that's kind of like traveling backwards on a train. But again, that's a disadvantage. I didn't like that, and I always try to face forward if possible, and I'll switch seats if I need to on a train. And then another thing that is a disadvantage of train travel is that there's a lot of starting and stopping, especially as you get out of the city or you're coming into the city. The trains stop at all the different train stops for let people get off and get on. And so you're always starting and stopping. And so you can't just kind of like get on the train and go to sleep. Because, obviously you can sleep, but once you start to fall asleep, then the train stops for people to come on, and there's new people on and some people getting off. And so that's one disadvantage that I had when I started, one disadvantage that I saw when I started traveling by train. Again, if you're from the East Coast and you deal with trains all the time, then this may not be any news to you. But I just thought it was like a disadvantage of train travel, as opposed to, like I said, you get on a plane and then you're on a plane, you fall asleep for 4 hours, 5 hours, whatever, and you never stop, obviously. So, anyways, that's another disadvantage that I have experienced, and just so you can be aware of. But with all that said, I think train travel is fantastic. And again, maybe it's because I was 35 years old before I took my first train. And so that's, that'll help you. Again, if this is the first time overseas, if you've never been overseas, you've never been to Europe by yourself, look to see if there's a route, if there's a train route for where you're trying to go. And like I say, hopefully you'll like it as much as I do. So, well, hopefully it helps. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. If you would, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.